Cool. Back inbound after hours. Welcome.
Boosh.
Awesome. So we thought this week we'd have a chat about ABM. Reason being is there's definitely been a steep uptake in the amount of people asking for ABM services, talking about ABM. I'd definitely say over the last 6 months, it's become very notable that is a change and that is a trend versus probably the previous 12 months before it, where people were talking about ABM but maybe not jumping in and doing it as much. So I've definitely noticed that as a change in like front end on sales, but also when I see what the team's doing, it's been really notable.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely seen the same. I think it's 50% of new people coming in. That's conservative, really.
Yeah.
I think it's always discussed, and it's just usually a budgetary thing or like a data thing, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And why you can't sometimes do ABM. Is it worth recapping on like HubSpot's positioning on ABM? And I know they've got ABM tools. Was it last year that they launched them? They're not actually like, it's not a massively in-depth part of HubSpot. You enable it, and it's kind of just a neat way of organizing contacts in your database. Some interesting lists and in additional tags and tiers and stuff like that. But it's not like a whole new hub or anything.
No, it's pretty. For the whole, it's stuff you could always have done. It's just like there's some custom fields, but obviously now they come as default. There's some. Essentially, they call it like the the ABM home screen thing is a series of lists which you could have made it, filter it by
some nice reports,
industry and tier, and some out of the box
stuff.
report. It's basically making all the stuff you could have done on HubSpot with ABM anyway, but out of the box in it, which is really nice, and putting some. It looks like a tool when it's got like a wrapper around it and it's in the menu and stuff. So that's probably part of the reason why the demand's going up, because there's just that lag from HubSpot building the tool to people asking for it.
Yeah.
And there's probably also the same lag from an education perspective on ABM itself. Like, people have talked about it for that many years now that enough people have read about it, jumped in with it, had a go of it, that it's more of a normal marketer's tool set.
I was going to say, what question I've got is, why do you think, so ABM's, like you say, has been around for a long time. I always saw it as and some people do still see it this way, as a salesperson's strategy, a sales team's thing, which it is. Very, very heavily reliant on providing sort of penetration and context to the sales team. How and why do you think now it come more over to the marketer to create campaigns around it? Because ABM at its core is kind of like, you got your target list, you're reaching out to people individually on an account by account basis, and you're trying to get a conversation, a very traditional approach, and all the tactics that surround that. But now it's becoming a little bit more layered and bringing in the marketing or the marketer, which is where we're sort of coming into it a little bit more. Why do you think that is, and why do you think people who are doing other things, inbound or whatever, are also wanting to layer in ABM now as a more regular thing?
You can never tell how much something's changing in the wider world versus your industry, but I guess one of the key drivers is now that marketing teams and sales teams are working a lot closely together than they were, and this is where ABM falls, isn't it? ABM is only it lives in between that space of marketing and sales, doesn't it? Or roles like growth and things like this, which merge the two together. That's where ABM lives. And if you don't have a marketing team and a sales team who have true alignment, who talk to each other, who have shared KPIs and shared goals, you're never actually going to jump in and do ABM the way that we think of ABM. You're either going to end up doing marketing to industries. So I've got an industry drop down on my menu and I've got some industry content. That's a very standalone marketing strategy to an industry. Or you're going to be a sales team, like you said. I'm going to pick up the phone to all people in this industry and I'm going to have a go at selling to them. And while your two teams are separate, that's it, isn't it? The beauty of it comes when you merge those two tactics together, you get ABM, but you can only get it by those teams functioning and working together, which is quite...
And sharing the same data.
And sharing the same data. And and like I said, the big ones having the same goals and
Mm.
being accountable for the same goals.
Same goals, same sort of qualification criteria. So like the sales stance would have been, budget, decision maker. Like, I know that person is this sort of role. I'm going to reach out to them, and there's like paper scoring systems, isn't there, for ABM if you're not doing it in HubSpot. I think with these tools now, as we're saying, shared data, you can set those rules. You can set the lead scoring effectively for ABM. You can run campaigns that bring in leads and then immediately start to dish stuff out, assign it to sales reps, give them a playbook, tell them when to call them, and you can start to automate it and make it really clever and super scalable. So maybe that, again, a little bit of the technology growth as well, and the comfort with marketing and sales teams working together on a platform like HubSpot enables it, even more. There's tons of platforms for ABM, but why do you think it's, again, something that people are wanting to do more of now? For me, like, a couple of things. I think with social, the targeting is getting ever and ever better. The audiences that you can create and you can build over time, not purely from plugging it in and then getting HubSpot or Facebook or LinkedIn actually to look around and grab lookalikes or whatever. That's one angle. But you can do a lot more now with targeting and the data around the audience and the behaviours to turn on and off audiences and do a lot more with that. But the approach to doing that on top of something like inbound or alongside something like content marketing or normal, organic social as opposed to that. It sounds like right now with in lockdown or removed from events and removed from a lot of in-person stuff where some of this one-to-one communication may have happened in the past, well or not, I don't know, but maybe that is where some of these budgets are going to as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure what your thoughts on that.
So it's hard to understand what drives change, isn't it? But I definitely think you've touched on the big ones there. Technology change is huge. Like, that is tools, whether it's HubSpot or not, are embedding ABM into it. So technology's got better, targeting's got infinitely better. So definitely technology change is one. COVID, there's obviously some drivers there. It's like salespeople are at home. Their only option is outreach, really, or dealing with inbound leads. They can't go and drum up their own business at trade shows and all these sorts of things that they had before. I think also just maybe the maturity of inbound and, like you said, content marketing and things. There's a natural progression to. I've been doing inbound for 2 or 3 years. As a business, you're used to building content, you're used to doing handoff from sales to marketers when someone gets certain lead scores or qualification. So a lot of you get good at a lot of the backbone of ABM by doing inbound. So, and people always want more, don't they? Like, we've mastered this inbound thing now. Like, obviously we'll keep that going because it's working, but what else can I bolt on?
Yeah.
And ABM is just a natural extension to that.
And some people are impatient and they want to, if you think you've got some good landing pages, you've got good content, you've been creating great campaigns, you've got some good automation set up, you're like, well, rather than the net's out there, it's catching bits and we're at a good pace. How can I expedite that? You do an ABM thing, take a bit of additional context you've got. If you've got your own target list, drop it in and then leverage all of that content that you've been creating to go hyper targeted. Now, one of the things I was going to ask or just to talk about was the difference between ABM versus outreach in its traditional sense versus PPC or like another tactic. These things that are all using similar data but in different ways. For me, the obvious one is the level of personalization and the level of niching down and the language used in some of these campaigns. I feel like I said campaign a lot there. But yeah, like you've got content, you've got good organic content or whatever. I think when you flick to ABM, you've got to go to the point with it. Hey, you from here. Here's this thing that's for you. It's going to solve the problem that I know you've got. And the landing page is for you to talk to me about that. You know, you go right on the nose with it, don't you? And that's something you've got to have confidence in your data to do, or else it kind of falls flat.
It's a bit of an odd one, because what ABM hasn't done as well as Inbound, I say ABM is like it's not an entity, but what it hasn't managed to achieve as well as Inbound is standardization of the terms, standardization of the methodology. Like ABM can actually mean quite a lot of, while everyone's talking roughly the same ballpark, there's very different meanings of it. Whereas if you went on Google now and just put in Inbound methodology, you would see the same methodology in 1,000 different colorways. But it would be the same if you went and put in ABM methodology, clicked on images, you'd see all sorts of weird and wonderful, probably very unrelated images. So I don't think that helps. So when someone comes to us and says they want ABM, you're definitely right. That could mean, so in my mind, how I would define ABM is holistically using the tactics. So you've got to be using multiple of the tactics available to you to get in front of the prospects. And it's got to be contextual to them and personalised to them enough to qualify for ABM in my eyes. If you're just going, I've got a list of people who are working manufacturing and I'm going to LinkedIn message them all. Like, you're not ticking my box of ABM, but probably will be somebody's.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely interesting, because that means for us as an agency, you can end up doing different variations of things. I think the biggest variation is how personalised or how niche you go. That seems to be the biggest pivot.
It's hard. It's hard when you've got different interpretations coming in and kind of going, we've got a process. We like it. We know we can do it. We know the tools work. We know it's a good process. But then, like you say, if one of those pillars doesn't fit, kind of like, well, you're not doing ABM anymore. But I say that in my head. But it's like, you know, you've got a broadly targeted list and a nice landing page, but what else have you got there? How much further are you going? Is that not just a good paid campaign at the end of the day? So you can be, there's that thing of like, how purist do you go with it, and, you know, get on your high horse about it, or do you just use as many of those tactics as you possibly can and go, we've got this broad organic search led like strategy, which is, you know, inbound or whatever. We've got community stuff on social, and our ABM might be how we do paid, and we take as much information as we can from all those other sources and our sales team, and we just make this hyper personalized stuff, which is slight shortcut and more applicable to these targets. You know, it's going to actually catch their attention, which is what ABM is all about, isn't it? It's getting in front of hard to reach people with wording that they actually pick up on. That isn't generic.
Means something to them.
That's the whole point.
Resonates.
So it's an interesting one, and I think it's why we wanted to talk about it today. Was like, why do people want to do it? Why are they doing it? And where do we see that going as well? I think whilst we're in this as we are at the moment, it's not going to stop. I think it's growing, but I do think there is a little bit still of, I want to do ABM, but I haven't got everything I need, and you know, you've got to just do the best with what you've got, haven't you? Yeah,
definitely. Jonathan, before I jump in, what time we are?
Just about to hit 15.
Okay, cool. Shall we do one more bit, can't we? Which you can edit out. So on that note, I was going to ask, what are some of the common pitfalls that people fall into when doing ABM? So they come to us, say we want to do ABM for the first time. What are some of the maybe misconceptions or pitfalls and stuff that we've seen people fall into?
The easiest one is, let's have a look at your data.
Yeah.
Or like your list.
Yeah.
Your list, we call it, you know. Give us your list. You've got a list, have you? Okay, let's have a look at that. So I think, the number one is the information you're going to get, you know, where as an agency, it's a bit different, where we would usually generate those contacts. We're generating those leads for our clients, whereas now it's like, you're giving us the leads and we're targeting them to get them for you to be able to actually get in front of those people. And they come in all shapes and sizes. You get thousands of companies, you get hundreds. I'd love it if we got 5. You know, that'd be great, because then it's like, okay, we can go hyper personalized on this. So I think that is a tricky one. Speed to getting that and starting a campaign. Again, with other types of campaign, you can drop bits over a period of time, over a few months. You can put content out, you can put social out. ABM, you really need that information, or else you're kind of stranded.
Can't start.
You can't do anything without the targets. So I'd say that's the first one, the data.
Yeah.
And then the commitment to actually refreshing that and replenishing it and keeping it up to date. I think the next one's maybe it's like the concept of what are you trying to do here? Like, you've got a list of companies you want to sell to. Is that just strategic direction for our marketing and goes into personas or whatever? Or is it literally we need those accounts, which is like good for ABM?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a bit blurred, and you go through the strategic process where you want to develop your ideal customer profiles, ICPs, and you want to get into the nitty gritty of this data, and actually they don't know, and it's just that they are all this type of company. But you're like, well, out of those, which are your tier ones, which are your tier twos, which are, let's talk about your buying committees in these companies, and they're like, well, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Like, so it's hard to throttle that as well, and the perception of what they want.
You can very easily just be doing, which is there's no wrong in this, but you can very easily just be doing industry marketing, can't you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to run LinkedIn ads
Great.
to manufacturing, which is fine, but
well, that's great. And it's trying to convince people that is absolutely good as well. Like, that's a good
a good
tactic. Like, if you've got an industry and you've got a list and you can create a pretty strong audience off the bat, awesome, we're ahead already. We're not starting from nothing. But yeah, nailing people down into the actual approach. Is it 5 accounts and you're going to go all out and be really personalised to them, or is it a broader segment of like a sector, but you've still got enough data to make it specific enough? Trying to think of actual technical things that fall down.
I think ads is there can be some quite technical things on ads without going too far into it, but most ad networks have minimum audience requirements, which you can fall into some of those traps, thinking, okay, if you go too niche, they're just not going to you're not going to show ads to those people. It won't let you just go like, I want to show this ad to Bob at Virgin, only him to see it. So that there's that, which I've seen a few people fall into. Like, my audience is just way too niche to use on some of those networks out of the box as they come. So I think that's a big one. And then maybe not a non-technical one, but a strategical one is messaging. Like, ABM's, the benefit of ABM is having really strong messaging around why you're talking to that sub-audience. And the thing I pet peeve, I guess, on this is people who are just targeting an industry because it's just like, oh, it looks like there's some money there, but I've not really got a good reason to talk to them beyond when you start saying, okay, so how do we craft this message of them versus what you normally say? It's like, oh, there's no difference. It's like, well,
yeah,
it kind of doesn't work then, does it? So, but there normally is a difference. They've just either not bothered to go that deep or taken the time to do it.
We work great with the manufacturing industry.
Insert personalisation token manufacturing industry. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
You've got to say, we solve this literal problem that only you have.
Yeah.
And it's quite weird that we know that, and it's a really nerdy problem that we fix, and that's why we've got this part of our solution.
Yeah.
You have to have that specific point to make, otherwise, like you say, it's going to fall flat. And I think that can be a hard conversation sometimes in that strategic process where, again, with ABM as an agency, we can help define that, but realistically, you need to know that, and you need to be coming to us with that. We'll help get it out, but sometimes you get there, you're like, you're solving a great thing, but it's the same regardless of how what segment or sector you're in, and let alone a company who you want to be doing some detailed research on a big company you want to land. And that can be a bit of a deflation when you have to tell somebody that it's probably not this. Well, let's not call it ABM, because we're not really doing that. The
person being targeted doesn't know we've taken the time to target them with a generic ad. All they see is a generic ad at the end of the day. So if you can't make your ad your email, whatever it is that's going to them pop for them, and it truly look like this is for me, like then you're missing the point, aren't you? You've got to get the person receiving whatever you're sending thinks it's for them. The case study at the bottom of the page is the case study of someone in their industry, whatever it is, then you're missing it.
I've got 2 other quick pitfalls that I wanted to include before we run out of time. One being as we've discussed throughout this, the commitment on the other side of the sales team in this process. ABM being a joint initiative that we're going to be running whatever we're running. Stuff's going to be coming through. We can set up tools like HubSpot to automate tasks, triggers, notifications. We can tell you when they're reading your blog, when they've come back for the 3rd time, or whatever we need to do. That's all going to fall down if you don't value that list. That maybe your boss has said the list and you don't care about it and whatever, and then we're firing loads of stuff over to you.
You've got to pick the phone up at the right time.
Well, yeah, that's the other point. Like, yes, there'll be an automation sequence and whatever, but ABM's kind of like, they're already there. They're at the door. Yeah. We're facilitating the knock, and you need to ring them and open the door. And again, it's a fast-moving, paid thing, and there's regular inputs from both sides needed. So I do see that falling flat sometimes, where it's great, we got all this interaction, all this context, we haven't got around to that yet because we're doing this, or we're not doing it at the pace needed.
Or even, carry on the analogy, how they open the door and start the conversation has got to flow on from all of the great stuff you've done today. So if you've taken the time to talk about an individual company and show case studies and blah, 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 and it's very, very relevant for that one person, and the salesperson has a conversation and starts back with his generic pitch.
Doesn't mention any of that stuff.
Then again, you've missed the opportunity.
Yeah, you've collected all this context. You actually need to use that as a script. Hey, you've been all over the site. I know you're interested in this, because you can weave that in, and that's kind of like inbound selling.
Did you enjoy reading about what we did with your competitor, and would you like to do that for you?
No, for sure. We do come across that, people thinking it's just any old lead. I think the last one for me is that just there's a lot of front-loaded work that goes into ABM. You are creating it before launch day, and you're kind of done with everything, and then you're just running it. I think there is also just that appetite to pivot and change with the data that's coming in, because it is a daily thing with ABM, in my opinion. Like a paid campaign, it is something you need to be sat on thinking about a lot, whereas inbound's different, and it's a little bit more of a sit and wait sort of thing. You've got to be willing to switch stuff off. You've got to be willing to change that messaging if stuff starts landing flat. This could be a list of 20 companies that you need, and you can't afford to run it for 60 days, 30 days with something that's not hitting, because eventually you're going to run out of opportunity to target these people. Definitely. Whether it's that ad set degrading, so technically it's going to go out of their feed, but if it's just, I've seen that bloody ad 10 times now, or I've seen something from them and they keep sending me, we know there's only so many opportunities there. So I think it's just being precious with any data you do put through, and being willing to change and go back to that real niche pain point stuff, and have enough of that. So maybe if you've just got one unicorn solution that you're putting all your chickens in like eggs in one basket for one company, like that is partially what ABM is. It's a little bit more higher stakes, but maybe have a few different plays that you can build in and pivot onto as well.
Oh, brilliant. Cool. Well, enjoyed chatting ABM. Good episode. I enjoyed that.
Awesome.
Speak to you soon.
See you in a bit. Bye.
Cheers, pal. Bye.